I just launched a new podcast, and in the first week, I got it on every major platform, the video versions on YouTube, and it hit the top 20 technology podcasts in Apple Podcasts. So, how did I do it? I'm going to give you the entire game plan, what we did from planning to artwork, to getting our first and second episodes ready, how we recorded the show on Riverside, and how that makes it easy to promote those clips everywhere on social media. And the full video version that's on YouTube came directly from the Riverside editor. It never even touched an external video editor. Step 1, we planned for about a month on how to launch this new show. We have an entire Notion workspace where we planned the first and second episode, and we wanted 2 episodes ready before we even launched the show. We recorded the first episode several weeks in advance, so then I can use that show to start getting all the RSS feeds and the channels ready for things like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But it's still an entire episode. This way, when we officially launched the show, listeners had 2 episodes they can listen to rather than just the new one we recorded on launch week. And we'll continue using Notion to plan our future episodes with links on the research, planning, and more. We also did lots of brainstorming on the podcast info, how we would format the show, some early topic ideas, and we did a lot of work on branding, which we'll talk about artwork in a second. Planning out the format of your show and how you're going to address certain topics is really key to making sure your first few episodes come off with a great first impression. If you're really going to promote and push hard those early episodes, you want to make sure they're the best quality they can be. So get with your co-hosts or plan some interviews in real detail. Make sure they're highly produced, that you have some hooks at the beginning of the show letting them know what to expect. This way, when someone hits play, they'll enjoy what they're hearing right away. The next step was to record our first or pilot episode, and of course, we did that with Riverside. This is going to be a video and audio podcast, and recording with Riverside, we can actually generate AI show notes with a summary, takeaways, and even chapter markers for this episode, which makes it easy to edit later in YouTube. We're also able to generate magic clips, which we're sharing on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram Reels, and I'll show you that in a moment as well. And while we edited all the video inside Riverside, I could still download the high-quality raw video files for me and my co-host, or the raw uncompressed wave audio files, and then edit those in an external editor. Now, after we recorded that first episode, I teased this podcast for an entire week and a half before we actually launched. We knew we were going to launch on January 4th, so right around the new year, we started teasing that a podcast was coming. I even put Easter eggs in some of my other videos showing that the new podcast is clearly shown. And this actually gets listeners and viewers excited because faithful followers might actually look for and find it early. And that's a privilege. They actually got to hear it and see it first. And then when we got close to launch, it was available everywhere, so people could find it and subscribe if they wanted to, but it was before the official launch. And people started asking if they can get a link, which is nice. And the day before, of course, all the hype talking about tomorrow, and if someone asked for a link to pre-subscribe, I mean, you got to reward that. And so I started sending the link out a day early. Building up the hype on any platform that you have, social media, TikTok, Instagram, Reels, Facebook, whatever it is, start teasing it a couple weeks in advance. Let them know it's coming. You can even have an email newsletter sign up for the launch of the podcast. This way, you can let everyone know once it's officially launched. Now you're starting to build an email list, you can continue to grow, and then you can share them about new merch, new episodes, or even big guests you're going to have on the show. Now, in order to get it ready to publish on all the platforms, you need lots of different artwork. You'll need your square image that's 3,000 pixels by 3,000. This is going to go to all the podcast players. If you're going to be on YouTube, it's helpful to have a YouTube channel header, and you're also going to want a social version to use for all these social media profiles. This will end up being a circle, so we took away some of the details. In other words, focusing on the name. And we'll talk specifically about Apple Podcasts in a moment, but there's some individual shapes you'll need for Apple Podcast subscriptions and show art, and this can really make your show stand out in Apple Podcasts. Next, we recorded our first official, or really our second episode here in Riverside, and we used features like screen share in the Riverside studio. So knowing it's going to be a video podcast on YouTube, there's actually engaging video elements throughout the show. I was able to upload a custom background in the Riverside editor, and every time I share my screen, you'll see it show up big here in the video podcast, and then you'll see whenever we stop screen sharing, me and my co-host show back up side by side in the video. This is an easy way to add engaging elements to your video using the share screen or the media board in Riverside. You can upload video and audio clips, play them during your recording, and then using the Riverside editor, they'll all be incorporated in your final edit. And we created magic clips here in Riverside, which is the vertical video, which is perfect for YouTube Shorts, Reels, and TikTok. Now, to get ready, we submitted the podcast to Apple Podcast with the custom artwork. And because we're actually offering a bonus content paid subscription, we got that all set up. We recorded some bonus content right after we recorded the main episode, so we can have a $5 subscription here in Apple Podcasts. And we made sure the podcast was live in Spotify and anywhere you can get your podcasts. We're actually hosting the show on transistor.fm, and when viewers come to our website, they can listen to this podcast in any app they would like or access the RSS feed directly. And if they click on an episode, they can start listening to it right away, and you get a full transcript of every episode when you record with Riverside, so that transcript is uploaded here. And Transistor makes it easy to use those chapter timestamps, again generated by Riverside, and you can embed the YouTube video right here on the episode page. You can actually publish directly to Transistor from the Riverside editor. So if you have more questions or you'd like to learn more about podcast hosts and how to get your recordings published everywhere, I'll put a video link up here and some in the video description to show you all of that. We also created our YouTube channel. Here's that custom header artwork and profile image. And you'll see we already started sharing those vertical clips as YouTube Shorts. You'll get varying views, but even in the first week, several videos got 2.4, 2.5 thousand views, which is helping our subscriber count. And even our full episode on this brand new podcast has 280 views. Here's what the video podcast looks like directly from Riverside. I uploaded this custom background image and our podcast artwork, all done in the Riverside editor. And you can see whenever we share the screen, it shows a big, me and my co-host are now small picture-in-picture, creates engaging video elements to your podcast, all directly in Riverside. You can see here's our account in Instagram. Not a ton of followers yet, but you'll see some of these reels already getting over 1,000 views, helping our podcast get in front of more people. And here's our account on TikTok. Again, we only have 1 follower. Listen, no shame in small audiences, but still these videos are getting in the hundreds of views every time we share a clip. The more exposure and more often someone sees a clip from your show, the more likely they're actually going to subscribe and go listen in their podcast player. And just a personal story, there's been a podcast I keep seeing clips of on TikTok. It's probably been a year. Every time I see a clip, I watch the whole thing. I love it. And I finally went to Apple Podcasts to listen to a full episode. But it took an entire year of seeing those clips on social media. So create those vertical video clips in Riverside, use our Magic Clips feature, share those vertical clips often. You can do 1 every day or even 2 every day, and it'll take a while, but you'll develop an audience, they'll find your content, and eventually, many of them will go actually listen to your show in a podcast app. And now that we're up and running, our show is in every podcast player. Here's the subscription in Apple Podcast. We're using custom episode artwork, so it looks great here in the podcast player. You can also go to Spotify. The show looks great there. And we uploaded a 40-second trailer. This way in Apple Podcasts and Spotify, someone can preview it real quick. And because we uploaded to YouTube and marked that playlist as a podcast, you can actually watch the podcast in the YouTube Music app or just switch over to audio only. And here in the YouTube Music app, people can like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Really powerful discovery tool as well. And now it's just a matter of being consistent, posting a new episode every week, continuing to share those clips on social media, and that audience will grow over time. And that's how I launched a podcast, and in the first week, got in the top 20 tech shows in Apple Podcasts. If you have any questions about the process or getting started with your own show, leave a comment below this video. I'll answer those personally, and I'll put a couple videos up here. This one is about what your podcast looks like in every app, like YouTube Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and how to make the most of that. Or if you're trying to launch a show and maybe you need some help with gear and equipment, well, there's a video right here that'll walk you through some beginner, intermediate, and advanced setups so you can get started with your show. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Riverside channel. We have lots of great content to help you start, grow, and be consistent with your podcast. Like this video, and thank you for watching. We'll catch you next time.